This episode of The Tome Show is brought to you by our patrons. You can support the show like them at patreon.com/The Tome Show. Welcome to Tome Book Club. The Tome is a D&D news, reviews, and interview show, and I'm your Tome host, Tracy Hurley.
And I'm Jeff Greiner. In each book club episode, we usually discuss one D&D related book, spoilers be damned, in full book club style. This time around, we read Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeon Academy, Tourney of Terror by Madeleine Roux.
And with us, as always, is Eric Paquette.
Hello, bonjour!
And with us, not as always, is...
Son.
Frederick.
Frederick is with us today, so we're getting the opinion of a young person on this young person's novel, so that's a special treat for us.
And then next episode, which we'll record in August, if all goes well, will be the third Dungeon Academy book, Last Best Hope.
Are you just doing the entire series?
Yes.
That's the idea. 3 books in 3 months.
Yes, indeed.
All right, before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to our patrons that help me pay the bills. You can help out too by going to patreon.com/thetomeshow and offering as little as $1 a month. Now, let's talk about Tourney of Terror. I don't know if Frederick had other plans for his evening, so maybe he wants to start off and let us know what he thinks about the book, and then we can talk about that and go into our usual thing, and then if he wants to skip out, he can.
I do not know what to say.
Did you like the book?
Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't read the first book, right?
No.
So even
Yeah,
just,
perfectly somehow.
okay. So even just jumping into this in the with book 2 and not having read book 1, you're still keeping up with it, okay?
Without any knowledge.
Nice. Awesome.
So, I've never read it. Just going off of second book.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what was one of your favorite characters? Okay. You like Snobla.
Yeah.
What did you like about Snobla?
Every S he overpronounced.
Uh-huh.
I guess.
Almost every S.
Snobla's the kobold with the magical shield is Snobla.
Yes.
No.
The brave.
Have you played D&D, Frederick?
I have never played or read anything related to D&D until this week.
But he's watched lots of YouTube videos about D&D.
Okay,
so
okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean by I've never watched people run it at the... Why is there a green box signaling whenever I talk?
That's how Discord works.
Hey, you watching? Oh, hey, you watching? Thank you for watching. Okay.
So, does the book feel like what you imagine D&D to be like?
Honestly, I did not imagine being in a school of magic.
Okay.
I imagine just being thrown into a random jungle in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. It is a little bit different in that way, right? And it also gets to focus on like these monster characters instead of, humans and elves and dwarves and all that kind of stuff.
What do you think of the school?
You
You don't get to see much of it in this book, right?
why the heck do you put the keystone underneath the school? If Lord Tyrion somehow broke out, why trap him in the school? He just knows where the secret is, so he could just go down. He could just go through the mirror, like chanting whatever the chant was. I forget. Then he goes all the way to get the keystone, and then unlocks the school to allow all dark magic.
Yeah. It was not very well thought out and very well planned by the adults, was it?
Epic story. It was not well thought out for an actual school.
Right. That's true. Of course, most actual schools don't have like monsters running it and stuff, so.
I agree with that too. What did you think of the dragons?
Honestly, my elementary school would be much cooler with them.
with dragons. Yeah, we didn't get a lot. We got like there in the first book there was like discussion of dragons, but we didn't actually get to see any dragons in the first book. And then the second book comes along, and we saw a lot of dragons.
One of the focuses is around a dragon who turns out to be a boy and also somehow works for a necromancer.
A lot to unpack there, right?
I didn't even know how the person who got him in his backstory even was a necromancer, because Mom might have skipped a page that explains that.
No, you don't have to skip those pages. You only skipped going how they got to downstairs, which is kind of gross and claustrophobic.
Are you going to go back to read the first book to?
Yeah, do you want to read the first book?
Honestly, I just want to get started on the second book.
The third book?
The third book.
Yeah. Oh, he wants to finish the third book early, so that way we're not rushing again.
Oh.
That is a wise choice.
Sure. Eric over here finished all 3 books a month ago.
I'm reading it now, so
Yeah. I imagine it's easier to read it the second time.
yes.
I blame you for not reminding me.
Mm.
There, I said it.
All right.
It's Mom's fault.
You're sounding a lot like Zelly right now.
No, Zelly is an adventurer. I'm just someone who can't go outside to take out the trash because I'm afraid of spiders.
All right.
Oh, some of those characters are afraid of things too.
Yeah.
And that's part of the
Yeah,
story.
Trash. They took down a necromancer.
Yeah.
Well, taking out the trash is kind of like fighting a necromancer in our world.
Yeah.
No, fighting a tiger is like fighting a necromancer.
Oh, I've never fought a tiger. I wouldn't know.
So, anything else you want to talk about with the book? What do we want to talk about with the book?
All right, should we let Frederick off the hook, and you can hang out if you want, or you can go and do other things, I suppose, if you want. It's up to you.
Do you want to be around to talk about it? Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Will there be spoilers?
Yep.
Yeah, but there isn't much left. Okay, go ahead.
Doesn't want to be spoiled on the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And the pages she skipped.
And the pages that were skipped. He's not going to let you off the hook on those.
No, it was taking about a minute a page, and I was like, look, dude, like, there's no way.
Yeah.
But let's skip the imp tunnel, which really didn't have all that much going for it.
No, it's world building. It's not storytelling.
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's talk. Frederick got a little bit into this, and in that discussion, we got a little bit into what this story was about. But let's break this story down a little bit more, and maybe in order. So this is the continuation. The Danger Club, as the party from the first book has become known, is off doing their things again. But the big excitement in this book is that the Tourney of Terror is going on. Which means that the dragons from Waterdeep, which apparently have their own school, all come up to the Dungeon Academy, and they play a rousing tournament of goreball between the dragons and the monsters of Dungeon Academy. Unsurprisingly, the dragons have been dominant in this game for a long time, which I would be disappointed if they weren't, because I look at the two different teams and I'm like, how does a team made up entirely of dragons not just wipe the floor with, the gelatinous cube and the owlbear? So.
Right. And their mascot's the Flumps. So
their mascot's the Flumps, which is nice. I actually enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so most of the Danger Club are very interested in the Tourney of Terror. Zelly is not.
Right.
She's more concerned with the fact that the necromancer Lord Carrion from the first book is imprisoned below the school, and she and the other members of the club are having these weird nightmares, and she just sort of figures out that he's up to something down there, and figuring out what it is. The whole, I don't know, maybe it's a function of the fact that anytime you have a fantasy school, you're going to inevitably draw comparisons to Harry Potter.
Right.
But this very much felt like one part Triwizard Cup, one part Quidditch match, for the Tourney of Terror.
Right.
And
yeah. It's like one of those things that only happens once every, I think, 50 years in this book, if I recall.
Yeah.
So it's like it's and there just happens to be a necromancer being held captive all at the same time.
Right. But we get a lot of world building.
Yes.
It's interesting to me. There's a lot of world building that's necessary, which is weird because it is ostensibly takes place in the Forgotten Realms, a very well detailed and well explored world. But I say ostensibly because, like, they throw some of those names around, but also I'm pretty certain that this would not be considered canon if there even was a novel canon anymore.
Right.
Yeah, they have to. She builds up the world that she's created within the Forgotten Realms, something that is not covered in any other books of Forgotten Realms. Just to define,
and the fact that there's a school of dragons where dragons learn how to dragon is like very much not within the canon of how dragons function in the Forgotten Realms. And I imagine the Dungeon Academy is kind of the same way. The idea that there would be that many dragons all in Waterdeep, a city that canonically has a ward that doesn't let dragons in, but she's using some of the Forgotten Realms sort of names and sort of building her own world using some of those names. And it's a young adult children's book, whatever it is, it's fine, whatever. But that world building, while interesting, is necessary as somebody who is a Forgotten Realms person, because this is not really the Forgotten Realms.
Well, and on top of it, right, even if she kept more towards Forgotten Realms lore, most of the audience wouldn't know it.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So she'd still have to be introducing it to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I think that's fairly common in literature for young people. That you have to do a lot of walking people through the setting and really explaining it, helping them paint that picture in their head and imagine what this world looks like and how it functions and all that kind of stuff. We do in this book get a lot more backstory on the Dungeon Academy and where it came from and how it came about and all these kinds of things. That way back in the day, there wasn't a dragon school and a monster school. It was all just one school in the location of Dungeon Academy. And then there was a schism, and part of the schism was built around this one necromancer who wanted to get into some dark art stuff that nobody else really wanted to deal with. And lo and behold, hey, guess what? That necromancer is the larger villain that Lord Carrion from the first book is working for, and that we are introduced to in this book.
Yeah.
And because he was originally part of the school, he knows some of the secrets. He knows some of the magic and the things that make this location and this school special, and some of the wards. And the magic that keeps all of the bad people out and stops him from opening portals and bringing in all of his undead and what have you. And so that's largely what's going on in this book, is that Lord Carrion, working for Morbid, or however we want to pronounce the Lich's name, Lord Carrion is escaping from the being imprisoned under the school and finding the keystone to break down the wards so they can portal in all the big bads and what have you. And Zelly has started to figure that out and is trying to deal with all of that while everybody else is more paying attention to the Goreball tournament, and very much in like Triwizard sort of style. Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy shenanigans, and the big bad evil of the world may be around, but also like the games must go on, right? So,
Tradition must continue.
right.
But we're also introduced a new character that comes from the dragons, a human boy named Tavian, who can transform into a red dragon, at least from the start. At the end, he becomes a brass dragon.
I want to say brass. As we've recently discussed in our detailed review of the Monster Manual, though, it is sometimes difficult, even when you're looking at the stats side by side, to tell the difference between a brass and a bronze. So,
But yeah, so he kind of becomes an honorary. Well, at first, he is not welcomed into Danger Club, but over time, he wins them over in a way.
well, he immediately wins over Zelly because they have a lot in common in that they're both human pretending to be something else.
Right.
His disguise is way better than hers, in that he has a magic amulet that actually lets him turn into a dragon, and she puts on some fake horns and a tail.
And everyone pretty much believes he is a dragon except for Snobla,
Right.
who does not smell right.
Yes.
Well, and
Even when he's a red dragon, he doesn't smell right for Snobla
Right.
until at the end he becomes. Now just recheck. It is a bronze dragon on the brass. When he becomes a bronze dragon, that's when Snobla says, "You smell right."
Oh.
So,
yeah, no, this feels like a running gag of the story of Snobla kind of talks in a broken English and is very, single-minded of honor and fight and what have you. And yet also is like the truth speaker, who says outlandish things that there's no reason for him to say. And then it's like, oh, okay, I guess you were right. Tavian isn't really a dragon. Oh, I guess you really do have a cousin that's a full-blown dragon who actually does like come to your call when you call for him. Now, it happened to be a coincidence that that he happened to be coming to check out strange sounds, and it was the same time that Snobla called. But like that's the running gag, is that there's no reason that you should be trusting the expertise of Snobla on anything, and yet Snobla's right about all of it.
when the coincidence that he was around there, I view it as like, if this was a game, this is a GM just playing to the type of Snobla the player when he says something and he just, okay, let's bring it up and stuff like that, just to play off the narrative aspect.
Yeah. So yeah, we're introduced to Tavian, who also ends up befriending them, kind of becoming if nothing else, honorary member of the Danger Club. Then Oops turns out is actually working for the bad guy all along, and then at the end realizes that he actually belongs more with the Danger Club than he did with his, evil necromancer master. And that's when he starts transforming into you said bronze dragon, because that's more true to who he really is, because deep down he's a good guy.
Right.
So I assume that means we're going to see him in the next book too. Is that true?
Well, because that's important, because we're missing a Danger Club member still.
Yes, at the end there is a missing because Bubble, the mimic, got captured. Or is it is it Bubble or is it Flash?
Flash was disappeared. Yeah.
Flash. Okay. I was forgetting which one.
And Flash is the blink dog, sort of.
Yeah.
Not really a member of Danger Club so much as like the club pet or mascot. But you almost get the impression like you get halfway through the story, they figure out, oh, all these horrible things are going on and Lord Carrion is free and they're looking for the keystone. And you kind of think that the kids would just sort of do the reasonable thing and let the adults handle it, except that Flash had gone missing. So they have to go and rescue their dog.
Right.
There's both Flash and Bubble that are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah.
So yeah, it kind of has the classic middle part of a trilogy thing going on, right? Where it doesn't really end in a full resolution, and you got to go on to the third book to figure out, how it's a little bit what Empire Strikes Back in that it doesn't fully resolve things. So you have to go to the third book.
It also, it's like a middle of introducing the bigger bad guy.
Right.
Type thing. Who
Yes.
is trying. Do they tell you what Morbid's goal is?
They talk about that he's trying to, is it free or bring in or whatever, a Dracolich.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Is that what you were looking at for?
Yes, I was trying to remember because, as established, I've read all 3 books, so I know where this is going.
That's right. No,
I
I have not read all 3 books. I am aware of their efforts towards bringing in a Dracolich ally.
Yes. But yes, the answer to your question about Avian being in the third book, he is in the third.
Yeah, I was just looking at the covers. It looks like he's on the cover.
Yeah.
He's a very small dragon, isn't he?
Yeah.
He can fit in the school.
I suppose. He based on the artwork, he's really more of a wormling. Based on the description, I kind of imagine him bigger, but based on the artwork, he looks like a wormling.
It all depends. I mean, there are some artwork in the books, like this.
Oh. Yeah, see, that's much bigger. That's much bigger than he appears on the cover.
Yeah, but then again, the amulet is something that permits him to transform into a dragon. So maybe it changes sizes.
And they establish a few times that the dragons go into the school and they're changing their size to do so.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that we're just supposed to expect. Dragons can be whatever size they want, I guess.
Dragons have been able to. Many dragons, less chromatic than more, but still, many dragons have been able to polymorph over the years.
Well, dragons have historically been able to shape change into humanoids. Not really change their own size, but, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in those mountains, so anything's possible there.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, at least what I can say about it, having watched Frederick read, like he was super into it, and he was having he was a little upset that he wasn't going to finish in time, so he but didn't want to skip any of it. So that's really cool, and from my perspective, because there aren't many books that for him do that.
And if the books, like, if that's the takeaway from reading these books, is that this is a great introduction into sort of kids enjoying D&D and sort of their gateway into the hobby, great. I think it's enjoyable as an adult as well. Yeah,
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But
it is a fun, simple story.
Yeah.
Exploration of a different view of the Forgotten Realms.
Right. And maybe it's my long history of spending decades hanging out with 12-year-olds. And maybe it's just who I am or how my life is or whatever, but I tend to prefer literature intended for younger audiences a lot of times. I like a young adult or teen fiction more oftentimes because of the more clear story, the more focused storytelling with, limited points of view, so it's easier to sort of follow and really put yourself into the perspective of the different characters and what have you. I know I may be, I don't know. That is not necessarily the more popular take on in fantasy literature, but that's my take. So, well, we talked through this pretty fast, even getting a perspective from a target audience member. Do we have any additional sort of thoughts? I think we more or less summarized the story.
Is there stuff that you guys are expecting or hoping to see get resolved in the next book?
I'm curious. So one of the things that happens, so in the first book, she meets her biological mother. She gets a magic item that allows her to call on her mother's help when she needs to. She uses that magic item in the second book, and then the biological mother doesn't show up. I'm assuming that in book 3, biological mother will show up or will figure out what's going on. So that's something I'm looking for in the third book. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to me though, because she felt very certain that it would work, but she's in a school where they have that thing where it blocks teleportation, and it's like, well, wouldn't that block it?
So but, even if she got the message, she's just gonna run. But it is a little bit of a Chekhov's gun situation, right? They showed us this thing in the first act. It's got to play out, and they tried to use it in the second act, and it didn't, and nothing happened. So it's got to actually matter at some point.
Oh yeah, totally.
She makes sure that she doesn't lose it, and like you said, she tries to use it.
Although I suppose if they wanted to go the angsty route, it could very much be the evidence of why biology is less important than found family. You know,
there's that aspect.
This isn't somebody I can count on, but these parents who raised me I can't. You
know. One of the things I did like in the book too, in terms of Gorball, is that they, I think it was Hugo, it might have been Taven, explaining how there is a lot more to sometimes sports than one might think of just the physical aspects of it. Like in the case, it's about the two coaches or whatever trying to figure out the strategies, right, that will work against the other one. So it's a game of the mind in addition to game of the body. And also that the sharing sports and sharing interests and activities are what helps build our connections to each other. And that's eventually what helps turn Tavian at the end to do what I think he really wanted to do anyway, but didn't think he had it in him. So I thought that was like a good part of the story, particularly for kids.
I do like, and maybe it's a function of, like, the trope is in books like this, that the adults don't believe the kids, and they don't believe the kids, and they don't believe the kids, and it's just sort of a slow arc of eventually something happens that's overwhelming, and they have to believe the kids, right? This book, I felt like the adults were much more inclined to actually listen to and believe the kids, but had the difficult task of having to set priorities that the kids didn't, weren't prepared to deal with. So I like that. I like that the kids were like, okay, these kids are not just saying things for the sake of saying things. This is, they are saying something important that we should be listening to them. But also we're the adults, and we have to figure out what's the next thing, and let's triage this and figure out what do we have to do right now, though. So
we can't just rush into this. We have to think. We have to share all that. But the kids just want to rush it and all that because it's the end of the world. It's important. We have to deal with this now.
Right.
So, yeah.
And just because the actions aren't exactly what we would do, I know you guys are saying this already, but like very explicitly, just because the actions aren't what you would do doesn't mean we're not taking action. Because her mom has to literally say, like, listen to you. Like, the reason you can't go into school is because we're listening to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're searching the school. Like, calm down.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Basically, in a lot of stories, somebody comes off as unreasonable. Everybody here seems reasonable.
Yeah.
They just have differing priorities, you know, and the
Right.
kids aren't dealing with as much. So they're like single-mindedly sort of focused on, yeah, but we have to deal with this one thing. And the adults are like, yeah, we do have to deal with this one thing, but also there's these other things. So
At the start, there was some dragons that felt unreasonable, but then again,
I mean,
with that as dragons tend to be unreasonable.
yes. Dragons tend to be unreasonable and superior, and it's worth noting that this school of dragons, as I recall, is only chromatic dragons. It's only evil dragons.
Yeah.
The dean is a black dragon, so it's like, wow,
which makes sense in as much as I would really have a hard time suspending disbelief if like gold dragons were sending their kids to study with red dragons.
Yeah.
That seems
Well, in
like
fact, he even can't go back to school because he's now a bronze dragon.
right.
Or, I think it's bronze, yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's just a school of chromatic dragons, considering that they're like, even the dungeon can mean it's all the evil monsters because the adventurers are the bad guys for them and all that.
Right.
So
It's also interesting how much like, and they do this a lot in that like, clearly many of the monsters are good people, right? Not just the Danger Club, but a lot of the adults and a lot of the other students, like they're nice to each other, whatever. But it's very important for them to put on airs about being vile and wicked and whatever because they're monsters. It's like, yeah, but you're not. Like you're helping each other out. You're building a community. You're supporting each other. Like this is what good people do.
to me, it feels all the teachers and all that were probably, yeah, we've done the dungeon thing of attacking the households. We've learned from that.
Mm-hmm.
We have decided we want to stop doing that, but we're going to teach folks how to properly do it and do it well for you to survive and
Sure.
all that. It's very a good and supportive thing to do.
It just feels like, and maybe this is necessary in a story where the protagonists are monsters. But it feels like in this world, it's not a struggle between good and evil. It's just racism. Like the different races don't like each other. You know, the humanoid races don't like the monsters and or the dragons, you know, and so it's not about good and evil, except that it is, but just not in the way we normally you think, oh, the monsters are evil. They're in the dungeon. The heroes go down and kill them.
Well, we can all come together against the evil of necromancy.
I guess everybody hates necromancers.
Yeah.
Sort of, except it's not like they're reaching out to the adventuring parties and heroes of the human world or whatever. So, and Zelly still has to hide who she is, and Tavian and whatever.
Right.
So, all right. Any other thoughts on Tourney of Terror?
I asked last time, and I asked again, do you guys have any ideas of any sort of potential class? Last time you said there was no classes they could be, but I'm just wondering if any of these characters would have classes. Now that you learn more of these characters.
Oh.
I'm talking about the Dungeon Club.
The danger club, yeah. I mean, it's hard to put. No, I guess is my answer.
That's fine. Which is a totally fine.
Like if I had to, I could give Snobla a class.
Okay.
If I had to, I could give Zelly a class.
Okay. Which class would you give Snobla if you had to?
Probably a fighter.
Okay.
Because that's how he plays. But like none of them are classes in as much as like they're picking up special abilities and doing magic and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And maybe and I think I said this in the first book. Maybe that's on purpose because they're monsters and monsters typically don't take classes.
Except for certain specific books which permits you to have classes. But
Right.
Well, they're in school, so technically they are taking classes. But
that is true. Yeah, that's true. But yes, no.
But I'm done.
And then I don't know if I don't feel like ranger is the right one for Hugo, but maybe more druid or something. But still, like Begenka's not doing magic, right?
Right.
So
He's definitely the nature lover, right? He's tending
Yeah.
plants in his windowsill and that kind of stuff.
be careful, even though we have to rush here to not knock over my plant. Like, grow another one.
I did appreciate at the very least that the plants and herbs being mentioned, many of them are established in Forgotten Realms lore in different
Nice.
places. Whether they be from the novels or even a lot of them I recognize as also being in Baldur's Gate 3, stuff like that. So
That's good.
Cool.
My knowledge of Forgotten Realms is not enough to know those specific plants. So.
Right. No. All right. Should we go ahead and wrap up then?
Sure.
All right. Then we're going to call that the end of the episode. It is time to say goodbye. I want to say special thanks to our patrons at patreon.com/The Tome Show. A special thank you goes out to Merrick Blackman, Michael Harrison, Doug Palmer, and Hyperlexic. Without our awesome patrons, I would be paying to keep the podcast going out of my own pocket. And I do so appreciate having people who are willing to chip in and help me pay those bills. And you can too, for as little as $1 a month.
If you'd like to contact us, you can send email thetomeshow@gmail.com. You can find me on social medias, Sarah Dark Magic, that's Sarah with an H, and at sarahdarkmagic.com. Jeff is at Squatch, SQACH, and Eric is at Eric Mpack, that's Eric with a C.
And pack with a Q.
And Pack with a Q. Show notes and other great shows are at thetomeshow.com.
And that's our chat about Tourney of Terror. Don't forget that next month we will be reading Dungeon Academy Last Best Hope, the grand conclusion of our trilogy. Until then, keep turning the page, Tomites.
I'm on the wall.